Okay. Anybody like to start off with their check-in, their bioregional check-in, and then pass it along? Trisha, very
I'll
enthusiastic.
I'll
Sweet.
start. I'll start off. Actually, it's for a very selfish reason, and it's because I'm sitting in a loud cafe. I don't know if you can hear me okay, but I'm sitting in a loud cafe and I'm coupling this meeting with um, eating because that's kind of the time I have. So I'm going to be going off camera, but I'm here. I don't even know if I'm in my bioregion because I'm still in the southern zone of Costa Rica. So it leads me to that question of like, I know I'm not in my watershed, but am I still in my bioregion? But for me personally, I'm in my bioregion because this is an area that I lived in for 11 years. And so as I'm like here and doing all my crazy errands and stuff, I'm running into people that I haven't seen in years, and Ticos and other foreigners. And what I'm what I'm noticing is just how beautiful it is to be in a place where people like really acknowledge one another. So where it's like it's still this small town thing where it's like, wow, I've known you for 20 years, I haven't seen you for 7, but hi, how are you? How's your family and stuff like that? And so on that level, like I'm in my bioregion, and I'm happy to be just with these weeds that are still very strong in my heart. So I'll leave it at that, and I will pass it on to RJ. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Tricia. I was just thinking where to go with this. Shows I'm kind of scattered today. I was just watching a John Young video about greeting and welcoming, and how in traditional indigenous cultures that's such a big part of starting out with anything, and how in our Western cultures we simply don't do that much in any way. We say, hi, how are you? That's about it. But yeah, just very interesting, that strong base. And here we are doing that. We're kind of the in-between group, with feet in a foot in both worlds. I think that's what struck me. So yeah. And the other aspect is time zones. So so here, this is feeding time. Trisha mentioned about lunchtime. Other places it's getting up time. Other places, and that always strikes me is yeah, we're here, and each in our own rhythm of the day. So we just had we were snowbound yesterday, which is 2 inches of snow and ice, and the weather was all over the map. So now it's all melted. So I guess we're in winter here in our bioregion. It's very interesting, as we know, when you get at different levels of elevations, and just a little bit north sometimes makes a difference too. So yeah, just those kind of placemaking scattered sediments that come to mind. And I'll pass that to Bennett in near Taos, I guess.
Yep. Up here on the mountain today, snuck away from work to just escape from the chaos and check in and be with you guys because it's way more enjoyable. Yeah, so coming here from the southern end of the Southern Rockies. Yeah, did some deep delving into the Sky story last night, and there were some very, for personal reasons, but there were some very feel pertinent to the ongoing threads that we've been following in this and other chats. I guess start with the bioregion and then go a little more abstract from there. So it's cold. I think that cold front kind of just swooped over and hit most of us in Western North America. Little sprinkling of snow, but super clear today. Yeah, it actually feels like winter now. It was like kind of a late start, but I think it's just the name of the game now. You never know when it's gonna hit. Pull up this other thing. So something that I've been kind of contemplating as of last night when I started, delving a little deeper is kind of like a matter of efficiency, which I think we were kind of speaking to earlier in this as well. Just like the noise that can happen with so many different, channels of communication and organizing. And it seems that, like, strangely enough, that there are these threads that are emerging in this sort of like one that came up in the campfire last night that I feel like has been very alive, is this kind of balance between the right and left brain modes of knowing, like the rational and the intuitive. And that to me is just like, yeah, it's so easy to get wrapped up in the technical and the mental understanding of this stuff, but like, how do we incorporate ways to bring us back to that feeling? I mean, I think that's a large reason why a lot of us are here and have remained here, is just how good it feels to be in communication regularly and like be building community with people who get it. So yeah, that's just something I've been kind of thinking about as well, like that, how to kind of like not muddy the waters, but like have kind of like a basis for tracking these threads and like kind of compiling all of our thoughts and perspectives on how to bring it into action. That was a little abstract, but I'm kind of frazzled from being in busy kitchen. So I'll pass it on to Claire.
Thank you, Bennett. Oh, there's a theme coming through here. I think, okay, so my bioregion, Salish Sea, Cowichan, I think a lot of the amplified conversation is both everything that's starting to happen in Cowichan and then inviting Joe, Penny, and Benji to have that conversation. And so all the stuff that starts to stir up. And people like Paul Chergino, who's in Washington State, who's part of this bioregion, and all the active stuff they're doing there. So all of the different pieces that sort of can come together, but it's, that's quite exciting because it's like, I often think this work is about like getting to that place where you're in the sweet spot of being able to unlock some of the potential. And until you have that catalyst and those right pieces in place, it just doesn't happen. And then all of a sudden there's that catalyst and it just starts to, it opens it up. So yeah, I go around feeling quite excited a lot of the time because you just see this potential just waiting to open. And I guess with that, I always think about, okay, so as soon as it opens up, what's going to hold it? And yeah, so, but just excited to be having the conversation. There's one other thing I'd really like to bring in. I guess it's just, I don't really have strong thoughts on it. It's just, we were invited to be part of a process where we were reviewing some climate change communication going out more to the mainstream. And I have to admit that, it was sort of based on a lot of the drawdown stuff, which is very much just felt like solutioneering, and it kind of missed any depth. And you sort of think, okay, that's really important, that the communication goes out. I don't want to put my energy into, like, I started really feeling like I just get irritated. And then, but I realized, yeah, we were being asked to be thoughtful. And yet, if we said what they really want to, if we really went in and gave them thoughtful feedback, like, I don't think they would be open to hearing it. So anyway, it's just, anyway, I guess I just wanted to put that out there. It's just what it came down to for me was, where do I choose to put my energy? And on the one hand is, I want to support people communicating and getting people a little more ready. but I also feel like there's a lot of work to do here, and it's going to pull me away from where I want to put my energy. So I just wanted to bring that up. Just that's a little bit of a struggle. I am going to pass to Mitty.
Thank you, Claire. Well, I will give two bioregional reports. The first is a sad one. Here in my bioregion, we have actually in my watershed, we have 80% public land, and we have a great devotion to the mountain lion. And I have a personal devotion to mountain lion because mountain lion physically greeted me the first time I walked out into what has become my bioregion in the mountains. P22 has been a kind of iconic figure in our bioregion. And he recently was seen in a lot of local areas and was clearly in pain, and he's been taken into captivity and he's being cared for. There is a possibility that he won't survive. He seems to have been hit by a car. The likelihood is that if he does survive, he will have to be kept in captivity now for the rest of his life. So that's really sad. Counterbalanced with that, coyote was in my backyard on Tuesday, and he was present in our constellation this week. And I was really glad to see my 3 rabbit family survived his visit to our backyard. So yeah, I speak for the animal kingdom today in my bioregion. In my Earth Regenerator bioregion, I would like to just briefly say and share to those who haven't heard, and I think many of you have now heard, that Tricia and I were given the opportunity to be in a regenerative constellation workshop this week, representing Earth Regenerators Network. And we had a beautiful meeting the day before with others who, including Pam, who was very briefly in the workshop but couldn't stay. But we had Gail Raquette, and we wonderfully had Dan Gonzalez, which felt very significant, flying the Barichara to be flag, the Ecoversity flag. And it felt significant that he was present in our formation piece. Out of that regenerative constellation workshop, I will actually share some notes I took, which are incomplete, but will nevertheless give a feeling for the workshop. Out of that experience, Tricia and I met with the facilitator on Thursday in a kind of debrief and explore where do we go from here. And there is going to be an invitation in the new year for constellations led by Annalika, who is quite an extraordinary, remarkable master facilitator of constellation. And she's particularly interested to place the invitation within the bioregional catalyst for place-based constellations. I think that's going to be a very exciting development in 2023 that will really be a resource and a tool we can use here in Earth Regenerators to really support our bioregional catalysts and weavers in place-based constellations. So that's my report back from my 2 bioregions, my virtual space bioregion and my physical bioregion. Thank you. Jan, what about you?
Thanks, Edie. Yeah, we're in the winter and we're into the deep snow and we're into the cold. So that's how my specific area is showing up. And I keep feeling the pull towards that the North Hemisphere solstice going inward and having that spaciousness. And it feels so important to do. I think my whole body seems to want to have that quiet, deep time. And it feels so important to go with the cycles of the earth and then the coming into the light and seeing what the next steps will be. Because I keep thinking about places I am putting my energy, how to do that more, what to do next. And I'm into the, where, what, and all that. And then I think just, follow that. But it's so hard because there's so many great things to be involved in, that so many different events and earth regenerators and other places and things to be caught up on and read and emails. And so there's that mind busyness that keeps going on. And so it is so hard just to honor the letting go and going inside. So I'm hoping to do that and just do some sitting outside and as the dark comes and being by the fire and the smoke and such. So I'm hoping to do that for about a week of doing quite a bit of that aspect and journaling and seeing what comes. I was somebody, because it's this time of year and Christmas and people connecting a bit, I had someone get in touch with me and ask me if I had any pictures of some family members from way back. And so I've pulled out all my photos and been going through all this stuff. And it's like, oh my God, that's a rat nest of memory lane and pictures and history and people. But one thing I did, I opened up one thing and out came a whole bunch of bioregional material and some photos and some maps and stuff that I'd done back in the late 80s. And it's like, oh yeah, right. So that was very interesting as part of the cycle of memory lane stuff. And I have someone, so the other thing, I have someone coming by this afternoon that it's going to be like one of those practice talks. It's someone I've known for quite a few years. She's been intensely involved in climate change and emission reduction and lobbying stuff. But I know that she's at that place of just like, what else is there? So we'll see how our conversation goes. I'm curious. It's like one of those practice times that you get. So we'll see how that goes. And I'm kind of just keep circling around in the community about who are the people and where is the openness to look at gathering, and do I do quite a bit of conceptual writing of things? Do I do the first and then the one-on-one, or so I'm kind of back and forth, and so hoping to have some clarity on that or just see what comes up. But I'm aware of the fact of so I'm curious about if there's any dates being set, Claire for Salish Cowichan area and Joe Penny and Benji coming, and how, I don't think anything will be ready here for quite a while, but there's that sense of, okay, here we are in this part of the world, and is there some way of connecting, or me coming out at that time or something like that. So it's just, how to think about some of that. And I'll pass it to Benji.
Thanks, Jan. Looking forward to hearing how your conversation this afternoon goes, speaking for the earth. Let's see. I didn't hear anybody bring up an agenda item. And maybe I'm getting ahead of myself, but maybe we can talk. Claire, did you want to talk about where do we put our energy? Maybe have a broad discussion on that. That's something you brought up. It seemed to be something that you're thinking about. Maybe we can help each other make some sense of all of the chaos. I heard a couple of people bring it up, in fact. Another thing that I heard with regards to us heading to Vancouver Island in the Cowichan Valley, we've seen so much potential that's born out of a cluster of bioregions beginning this process in proximity to one another, neighboring bioregions. So Right now, Joe is sort of putting out feelers for bioregions around the Toronto area. And perhaps, Jan, we can talk about other bioregions in the Pacific Northwest, maybe the Upper Kootenay could be on the list. As far as my bioregional update, I know I'm going kind of in a weird order here. It's so warm outside. It's just like such a mild winter. It's got no oomph. Is it cold there, Meaty? Yeah, I mean, I guess it's like a little bit cold today, but it's just
Mind you, cold is 60 degrees. Yeah. In
oh,
California.
thanks for reminding me. Yeah. You come out here, you'd adapt a little bit. It'd feel mild eventually. This 35, 40 degrees. But yeah, just thinking about how I relate to this place, I'm looking forward to lots of travel, lots of interacting with a multitude of bioregions, holding the network, doing my best to do so anyways, and really just reflecting on how, where do I root into? Because I feel like I kind of need that. I think it's probably an important part of this work. I want to eventually get down to Barichara, but maybe for a while it's the Southern Rockies, the cluster of bioregions here. Maybe it's Paonia, Carbondale, Taos, the Southern Utah deserts, all of it. And I think it is really important to stay grounded somewhere. I feel so, this workshop I'm planning for tomorrow, like how to listen and be a speaker for the earth in our bioregions. Just did preparation for it. I was going on a walk yesterday, just trying to listen to the landscape. And I heard like nothing as I'm walking by a Starbucks and like the fifth house that looks the same. It's like, wow, like the trees don't even talk to me really around here. They're just planted into such, human built, human planned environments. It's so sad. So anyways, that's kind of what I'm grappling with. It's like, where do I got to root in somewhere. I got to have some earth connection while I do all this work. So something I'm kind of playing around with in my head. Can I fit that into everything else going on? I don't know. But anyways, for today, so that's my bioregional check-in. Other than that, feeling good. And for today, I'd love to just talk at some point about tomorrow's session with you all and just run it by you. I've been kind of collaborating a little bit with Bennett. We've come up with some good things. It's a real light agenda, but just love to run it by you if we've got the time. And then Claire, I saw your hand. Do you have a question?
Yeah, I just agenda items. What I heard coming up from you, and then I had heard the communication flows tools, some discussion, even just thinking about a process for looking at it rather than, yeah.
Or even where do we put our energy just broadly? Because you brought up the climate, I forget exactly the story, but there was somebody related to climate change and lobbying, and maybe I've got the story wrong, but where do we focus? And where do we not focus?
Yeah.
And what heuristics can we use to sort of guide us forward? Because there's so much going on.
Yeah.
But if you want to talk about communication channels as well.
No. Well, it just is something that's coming up, and I know that, but I mean, yeah, there's only a limit. Like I'd like to focus the agenda if we're going to have a discussion.
Yeah.
And then I just wondered, there was one other agenda item that I thought about when you mentioned, Joe, putting out feelers for bioregions to activate. There are some bioregions where I've heard it mentioned and sort of wondering about, oh, well, I know people, I know things there. I'm just wondering whether we do a brainstorming of that or think about just like we've got contacts in places anyway, just where that conversation could go. It doesn't have to be here, but just putting it.
Yeah, well, let's go ahead and jot down all of the topics, and then we can look back and we can plan our agenda. How about that? Maybe that'll fit in. Meaty, I see your hand.
Yes, so I'd like to put on the agenda, not necessarily for today, but as a theme for us to review regularly, the interface between bioregional activators and bioregional catalysts in Earth Regenerators Network. It feels to me this really needs holding tenderly and making sure that we're interfacing in a way that is really supportive to both earth regenerators and bioregional activators. And that needs to, I think, to be a conscious piece. And I can't think a better place than in bioregional catalysts for the dialogue to occur, because it's both grounded and bigger than grounded. And I sense you hold that in your being, Benji. So that's my agenda item, what I propose as our agenda item.
Jan.
Yes, I would say that for sure. It's a little bit the question I had a while ago about kind of doing a reflection on bioregional catalysts. And I find it easier to bring that up today because Bennett is the only new person with this group of people that's been meeting for quite a while. And we've been around with Bennett a few times, and we're in the campfire the other day and whatever. So it feels, but sometimes I haven't felt quite like bringing it up because we're working with so many other people that we're working with that larger, how do we just talk and be together? But with this kind of the core group of people that have been meeting for a long time or are in this, it feels that some of those dynamics, and they also impact the question then about communications, not about just about communications on the ground, but communications right here and the communications with the larger systems that we're part of. So I echo that and add to it.
Okay, so how does our list of potential topics look, Claire? I wasn't able to access the document. Oh, we've got a new.
Put it in the chat.
Okay. Oh, easy peasy. Thanks.
And I don't know why you couldn't access. Let me just check settings.
Okay, so we've got communication flows. We've got where do we put our energy? We've got bioregions to activate, how to sort of do outreach or explore leads. The interface between the bioregional catalysts and the bioregional activators, and the rest of ER. Those sound like the 4. What do you say we drop communication flows to the bottom, since some of these other conversations might inform that, and it seems to be lower priority anyway. If we can get to it, then that's great. But what do you say we prioritize the first 3? Oh, and also I wanted to briefly introduce my the agenda for tomorrow.
Yeah, apologies. I'm adding that in right now. Sorry.
Oh, no need to say sorry. You even said it twice. What do you say? We've got 55 minutes and we've got 4 or 5 topics. Is anybody feeling a strong impulse towards top priority? I think I could probably share my agenda for tomorrow and make it kind of quick. Can we do that and knock that out of the way? Knock that out, and then we'll move on to where do we put our energy seems really important to me. And then bioregional interface between bioregional catalysts and the rest of ER and activators, maybe 3rd. And then 4th is where do we put our energy? Wait, did I say that right? Yeah, I think so. Does that sound good? I don't know if I said that right. Okay. All right, so I'll talk about the agenda. And then we could talk about I think where we put our energy is 2nd, interface between bioregional catalysts, ER activators, and then activating other bioregions leads, how to spread the message geographically, put out feelers. Okay, so can we hold that? Did we get that jotted down somewhere? Because my memory is proving a little bit leaky. Okay, so as far as tomorrow, this is sort of inspired by, let's see, where do I go? On Wednesday, we only had Rita show up from Carbondale and Paonia. And so I'm kind of sensing like the people on the ground in both places have been talking about this a lot. I think that they've probably, they've already carved out time in their schedules to explore this stuff. and maybe they're more interested in the upcoming meetings on the ground. So maybe the virtual community doesn't offer them as much value at this specific point in time. And so because of that, I'm sort of sensing that we could explore more broadly this weekend, tomorrow, in terms of what it is that we're doing. And I started to sense into some of the things that are rising up in the field. I had a conversation with Joe, and he was talking about, we've both been talking about really clarifying or adding into the overall story this idea of being speakers for the earth, being speakers for our bioregions. You know, he was so deeply inspired by his time in Moab, being with those rocks and experiencing deep time, and he really felt a deepening, an adding of layers onto his purpose for being here, and felt so strongly that that's like how he wants to identify from now on. And I was really inspired by that. I've always kind of considered myself, without that, maybe without that terminology or without that specific role, I've kind of felt that I would love to be a speaker for the earth, be a speaker for bioregions. And it really invites us into this embodied place of relating with the landscape, and frankly, invites sort of communion with the spiritual, right? The ineffable. Like, how do you speak for the entire landscape? It opens us up completely. And so as people on the ground, I don't know how many people are going to be joining, but as they are, and they're just getting into these conversations, it seems like a really fruitful space to explore. And so the three questions, I came up with 3 questions with Joe. It was pretty much Joe helped me with these. Let me just look them up real quick so I don't get them slightly off. This will just take a second. Okay, I'm already here. The first one was, in what ways must we listen to the land in order to be able to speak for it? So that's, you know, really turning us on to how we make sense of it, how we see it as well, and how we see it as individuals and collectives, not to seed the conversation, so to speak, but that's what I'm sensing into that for that question. And then, why did human cultures ever stop speaking for the land? And how does that inform our process for learning to speak for it once again, which I think is really fertile ground. And then lastly, this just ties in beautifully. It brings us up to the larger scale, the higher level of the fractal. In what ways can a network of bioregions speak for all of Earth? And that, I think, really can infuse us with purpose in that particular conversation, as we're looking for ways to hold space for continued bioregional support, connection, learning. And yes, I can definitely post those questions. And then the only other thing that I wanted to bring in was context setting, how to set the stage for the conversation. And I was talking a little bit with Bennett yesterday. This idea of embodiment has come up over and over and over and over. How do we enter into like a more experiential way of making sense of the world, but balance that with concepts, certainly. But you know, we come from spaces that skew our thinking so into the conceptual realm, that I really want to make a practice of almost overemphasizing the experiential, the feeling. So I've been looking at Google Earth. I've been looking at the continental scale, and just trying to I've been doing some research on the tectonic plates, the geology of the southwestern United States, and I think I can explore a story of the importance of the headwaters in the Southern Rockies, the importance of the snowpack that is reducing because the region only gets precipitation, or most of its precipitation is from September to May. And because of rain shadows in the Sierra Nevada and rain shadows in the Rockies, most of that area doesn't get much at all. And so many parts of the Southwest rely on the flows that come down the Colorado River and all of its tributaries. And so as members of the headwaters, we are in a deep relationship of I don't want to call it providing resources, but allowing resources to flow down that sustain life downstream. And I think that relationship, that orientation is sort of, I don't know. I'm obviously still like searching for the story, the way to make this compelling, the way to make this relational and experiential. But I'm sensing into what's the relationship with people downstream, given the really deep importance of the headwaters. And so that's where I'm at. And sorry if that was like a lot and confusing to track, but I'm just curious what everybody's thinking. Yeah, Bennett.
No, I love it too. It sounds like you've really got it. You've got the overall picture kind of there. It's just fleshing out the details at this point. I think you touched on something so important, and I understand wanting to be really delicate with the wording like that. The relationship between like the upper basin of the Colorado and the lower basin, like being at that higher elevation, being in the headwaters is a responsibility, right? Like it's the work we do up here is so magnified downstream. Like every little bit of water we save up here, every little bit more that we have stored in the soil, it makes a big difference. And the scales are such that it's like, if everyone started doing this work now, like, yeah, it would take some time to see, but it's just like having that larger perspective of like being in relationship to our neighbors and the different bioregions, so important. I feel that really ties into sort of the clusters of bioregions activating in these groups together. Like how do we spell out these relationships? How do we, really ensure that we're being accountable to our neighbors downstream, unlike the current situation, where it's like, okay, dam it up as much as possible and hoard it. And it's like, no, that's the opposite, guys. So yeah, I think that you're really onto something with that. And it feels good to be viewing it from a relational context in terms of like, the larger earth community of the more than humans, but also our human neighbors, right? So yeah, awesome.
Thank you, man. Really well articulated. That brought a lot of clarity. I appreciate that. You've got a way with words, Bennett. I don't know if you noticed. Yeah, and to add even more complexity to the conversation, it's like, how do we begin to really clarify relationships and intentions with bioregions and people that are downstream amidst the entrenchment from the existing system, limiting the amount of things that we can actually do. But all the while, I think we can continue to cultivate intentionality and care and mutual care and respect. So that's a whole other part of the conversation, but that's probably more appropriate for a campfire. Claire.
Yeah, I did bring this up at campfire yesterday, but I had just the most amazing conversation meeting with Christine Paraflox from Paonia.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, and just to what you were speaking about, and I'm thinking, she is an amazing resource, and her specialty practice is in bringing the arts and dance like embodiment practices to connected to the land. And so she's got all kinds of examples of stuff she's done with the kids. And as she was describing it, like I wouldn't do justice to it. So I would just point you in her direction.
Yeah.
But I'm so excited to even have somebody like that to connect with, and so yeah, she recognized things I was talking about that resonated for her as well. So just those are amazing resources. So I would just say, for what you're wanting to go to, I would say she would be amazing to connect with. Plus, I just want to put a plug in for this, because as an artist that was doing the kind of work I was doing, which was really in service to this greater vision, I needed to be asked. I was there, but I was also humble about not wanting to it felt like self-promotion or I don't know, weird stuff that kind of you play tricks in your mind. Mm-hmm. I needed to be invited. And I just want to say, invite the artists, find out who they are and invite them. They can always say no. And there are going to be, and there are other conversations to have around like sort of how you anybody giving of their time needs to be valued, and that's a whole other conversation. But I just want to really say, invite your artists, because they're hugely important.
Amen to that. Yeah. And I don't know if I have time to reach out to her for tomorrow's session, but I just want to let you know I've had both of you in mind quite a lot lately. This conversation is really important to me as well. And she's been sending me emails, and I was considering putting together a conversation around this for one of our upcoming bioregional catalyst sessions, and inviting both you and her to collaborate with me on that, because
That'd be
I think
great.
it's, yeah, go for
And
it.
let me just say one other person, she's sitting right here, Jan. Jan is amazing.
Oh yeah.
No theater background and everything.
Oh
so.
yeah. Jan's there. Yeah, I think that could be really useful for all bioregions that are activating as they're trying to figure out, how to develop a shared identity, fun things to do together, engaging things to do together. I think that we're at like a sort of acupuncture point early on where these art workshops where we're seeing ourselves, can have hugely beneficial impacts. So yeah, the sooner the better. Yeah. Meaty and Jan, I do want to be conscious of time as well to be able to fit in at least a couple more topics. Meaty.
So I want to riff on that, to see us encourage the artists to invite themselves in. Don't wait for someone to do it. Invite yourself in. We're all personally sovereign, and we really need to step up and get over ourselves, I think. I'm the first to have to do that. I got taken to task by Travis Kaplan some months ago, and I've really grown into what he said. And I'm ready to go back to him and say, thank you for really being tough with me, Travis. I also want to speak to the headwater and I want to bring in the voice of those who don't speak so easily in these circles, which is the creatures, the animals, all the species of our headwaters, because we have a situation here where the headwaters of my creek actually abut into the Simi Hills, and they are containers of poison toxins. Well, they're not necessarily poisonous. Oil companies love those deposits, but they're pretty darn poisonous for the artificial lake inhabitants, the fish that have been imported into that lake to be fished by the local inhabitants who like to go out in their boats and fish from the lake. Whenever there is a real deluge in the Simi Hills, those toxins come down streams, they come into the lake. There have been several catastrophic fish genocide as a result of that. So actually waking ourselves up to the fact that we are members of an ecosystem, and we have to understand how the other species are relating with us, and we can do untold damage as well as doing untold good. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Meaty. Jan.
Yeah, just briefly, one of the things, and we actually talked about
Jan,
that.
for some reason I can't hear you. You're not. Oh, no, I just heard you.
Okay, can you hear me?
I don't know what that was all about, but yes.
Okay. Yeah, just briefly, we had talked in Campfire a little bit about the same question about how to embody with the sense of the earth that we're near, and this being able to, I think as an exercise, is just have people really be embodied in their bodies. I mean, they're not going to get the connection with the earth unless they're present in their bodies in the moments, and that's something you can do in a workshop. And so connecting the breath with the air, that the place they're in, the drinking of water and what that feels like with the space they're in, and the temperature on their skin and feeling that. And so all of those things, when we're essentially connected with our bodies, then we have a likelihood that we might then start connecting with the earth more. But if we don't get that body fence, then we won't go to the next place. So that was one thing. And also I think just watching out about headwaters, because the people can in their mind think of headwaters similar to a tap, like, oh, that's where the water comes from. And it's like not like some water comes from, a little bit of water comes from the headwaters, but it collects and collects and collects all the way down, so that it's not the same water by any means that reaches the flatter areas further down or something like that. So I think otherwise there can be a sense of ownership of that water, as if it's a static thing. So just knowing that I've run into that with some conversations. It's like not our water. And it also, basically it comes from the climate and the tectonic plates and the shapes of those and how it's caught and drained into that system. So just a thought I wanted to throw in, but I didn't want to talk very long. Thanks, bye.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm really resonating with the idea of bringing in embodying into our bodies. I was thinking about using my disease as a sort of context setter and explaining how it's been such a, my healing journey has been such a process of cultivating an awareness that has served me in cultivating my awareness of the landscape itself. I was a little, I'll think about that. I think that that's a really good point. Bring in something at the very least after talking about the geology and the tectonic plates without it being too long of a context setter. But I think that's powerful, definitely. So thank you for that. Yeah, I think that I think we're good to move on to the next topic. Yeah, I'm sensing that, Claire, and that was how to not, you are muted. Was it about how to direct our attention or to manage our
Where do we
energy?
put our energy? Where do we, and where do we not, like, I guess there's sort of a discernment piece of that, like how do we discern where, and I'm almost wondering if it would be good to have like a breakout room on this one or no? What do you think? Or just a general?
I think this is a pretty small group. I'm thinking stay together. Is that all right with everybody? Do you have a really strong, okay, you're nodding now. Okay. Yeah, Jan, or no, that's Trisha. Sorry, I just saw the J. Yeah, Trisha, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, I don't know where the J came from. But anyway, there it is. I've actually been dealing with that quite a bit over the last few months, Claire. And what I'm finding is everything inside my intuition flares up when I'm meant to not be in a room or when I'm meant to not be focusing on a particular thing. And I can let my logical mind override that. But I'm finding that my body is just kind of like my senses are just telling me. But what I'm also finding is that I have allies that are meant to be in those rooms. And so part of it for me is just, being in communication with those allies, explaining that that's not mine to do, that I'm grateful that they're doing it. And if there's ways that I can be of support, then let me know. And so in that way, it's like not closing the door on it, but not putting myself in those situations where, like I said, I feel like we feel it. If, yeah. Anyway, that's been my experience. Thanks.
Yeah, I really resonate with that. And one of the things that I've been really reflecting on lately is the value in deepening my purpose and clarifying my purpose. I have been getting a lot clearer on it since I've been doing this bioregional activation process and collaborating more closely with Joe and Penny. And I feel that the energies that I am now investing in things can be more concentrated in a sense, more directed, and other things that come in, it's easier for me to understand the best way to relate to them. If it's an ally doesn't share my exact purpose, there's a particular way of relating to that sort of person. But it's just brought so much clarity. It's really helpful. And we have to protect our time and our energy for sure. So yeah, just clarification of purpose, deepening of it. RJ.
Yes, and this is a good one for me because I know I'm feeling responsible And when I'm feeling really responsible, then I tend to try to do more than I'm actually able to do. And that's probably not uncommon for any of us. But it is right at that point for several reasons right now. Where I'm at, I was thinking as you were going over the agenda for tomorrow, a lot of that is the beginning of something, and it's the ability to kind of be there at the same time, you know, seeing the flow occur. I know I can't be there tomorrow. That's one of the things, and I don't think it's especially important that I be there tomorrow. But that's the kind of feeling that comes up: is how do I fit this in when I know I actually can't. That's the thing about feeling responsible. So, and I think also it's kind of the craziness of the season, which is not the winter season. It's the season that, again, the Western culture puts us in. So at least where I'm at, everything is happening around, okay, Bethlehem is the Christmas city. There's all these events, you know, be here, be there. It's like total focus. And I can't do that. And yet it's there. And the people that I normally associate with are very much into that because they're very involved in the community. So there's that sense. And it relates to Stonehenge as well, because it's always been a big season. It's been a 6-week season for gathering. So I'm speaking, you know, very directly about my own challenge with that. And I can just see that I am going to have to feel, it's a feeling, less responsible and just be present where I can be. So if you don't see me around, I didn't say the other stuff to bring that up, but if you don't see me around, know that I'm listening, know that I care, know that it really means a lot. And I think everything that's been talked about so far in this session is right on the path. There's nothing I can add to that at this point, nor need to. It's very, very good. And I think it will evolve well. And I also did see Joe's work, Joe and Penny's work, and I thought, yeah, that's the deep structure of where we're at, just being there in Moab, which I've never seen, but to see some of those photos were very stirring. And yeah, so for me to rest with it a little bit, I know I'm going to be busy anyway. And the other aspect is I find myself being pulled in to the Great Lakes region, and you know, some of the things with Toronto, some of the sides of both sides of the lake, because that was very near and dear to me many years ago. And I see that as other people coming forward with that and discussion coming forward with that, it's like this pull of the old draft horse. I want to be up there. I want to be doing that. And it's just not something I should be doing. So I'm speaking very, very frankly about that, my own little journey going on there, and I'll get through that. But if you don't see me around much, you know, that doesn't mean that I don't care. So I've got to work with that end of it. Also, there's some things going on about dialogue, which are very interesting. The BOEM dialogue, and it's bringing some people out of the woodwork that I think might relate to Earth Regenerators. So, and that came out of the Bioregional Summit. So I see that going on as well, and we'll just see where that goes. But meeting a few new people that I haven't met before that I think fit pretty well with the conversations that we're having here. And so much of it does go back, it really does go back to pro-social or whatever, however we say that. If we don't have that strong base in our relations, then we don't really move forward. Almost as Claire mentioned, if we're talking about what do we do right, the solutioneering about climate change, that will not really go anywhere unless the pro-social piece is there and people are more aware of that as they go into it. And in essence, it's back off a little bit. So I'm sorry for going into that detail, but that is a very personal perspective and very honest from what I'm saying. And what's going on here, I'm just listening today. I think it's right on the path. I have nothing further to add with that. So thanks for the opportunity to.
Yeah, thank you for the concrete example, RJ. And so I see Claire's hand and Trisha's, and maybe we move on to the next topic after that. I think that'll give us about at least 20 minutes to discuss bioregional catalyst relationship to ER and activators. Claire.
Yeah, I'm not going to repeat what you said, RJ, because you really spoke to the point I was wanting to make. But just, I was actually just thinking about, as a parent, often feeling like I was being the bad parent because I wasn't signing my kids up for everything. And like, because I was consciously actually really, it's really important to me being present. And if you don't allow the space just to be present, I need that. That's something that I need. I need to be present. And I feel like I'm constantly like trying to figure out where I'm going to get that space just to be yeah. And so, and Jan and I actually had a conversation about this yesterday as well, especially at winter and solstice time, which is sort of that going in time. And so, yeah, we're talking about being in that embodiment and being present in the land. Well, what if we're not listening to that? And how do we support each other in it? Because I feel like I'm always countercultural in that respect. Like it's just everyone around me. It's, you know, I feel as if I'm having to explain myself and it's not being understood in sort of in all aspects. And so how do we start to normalize that actually being, that creating that space is what we should be doing? And, you know, the thing that came up for me, and I mean, this is sort of a religious example, but yeah, Sundays were put aside as the day of rest. Well, you know what, that's actually culturally quite a good idea, that one day a week, I mean, there could be many different forms that it could take in, but there was that recognition that we needed to have that still time that was not programmed. And then you started getting shopping and all the other things that got added into Sundays. I don't know how it was in North America, but I remember growing up and there were no shops, nothing was open on a Sunday. And yeah, it was actually really nice. So just to sort of say that I think in earth regenerators, that's one of the things that culturally, I don't think that we're really paying attention to it. And I think it is, anyway, I won't carry on, but I keeps coming up, so.
You know, I was actually just going to draw on the exact same point. Because, you know, Benji, you had mentioned in your check-in about trying to get in touch with the bioregion and you know, like being exposed constantly to like these man-made constructs. And it's the same thing here, where it's like, yes, wintertime is a time of slowing down and you know, being inside and having that reflection time. And instead we're in this modern, it's a predicament, right? We are in a predicament. It's not a problem. There's like no like solution, you know, that's kind of universal. And going into this arts thing, I think on some level, we have to actually really honor the grief and the trauma that that we are experiencing as sentient human beings that are out of balance with our natural place in things. And when you talk about embodiment and the arts, I mean, I think that has to come from another sense that's other than the mind, but it is also paying attention with the mind and recognizing like, oh yeah, here I am building a cement house with you know, with tile flooring. Like, what the hell am I doing? You know, I'm like part of this thing, but like recognizing it, I'm sitting with it, you know, and then as a result of that, I don't kind of lose my connection with the fact that I am just in this dilemma, this, you know, as a human being right now, just kind of doing the best that I can. And then it allows me to do the little tweaks of like going to the bamboo farm and getting as much bamboo as I could to kind of to bring in the natural elements. Anyway, that's a lot of personal and theoretical, but thank you. I just wanted to bring that in.
Yeah, thanks, Tricia. I like seeing you animated. It's fun. And we'll let one more person on the ride, Meaty, like to share, and then we'll move on to the next topic.
I want to just draw attention to what RJ brought in at the beginning, time zones. We are in a global network, and we don't need to be everywhere all of the time. We can trust our Southern Hemisphere people to be in the summer, and we can trust our Northern Hemisphere people to be in the winter. And we can be what we need to be where we are now. And if it's about being countercultural, and if it is the case that we in Earth Regenerators don't take account of it enough, then be countercultural in Earth Regenerators and be the change we want to see happen. It's so simple. Be here now. And it's so complicated to do it. But that's my pulpit, and I get off it now. Thank you for listening.
Okay, moving on to the Bioregional Catalyst purpose, relationship with ER, bioregional activators. I want to invite any of you to add to the context, kick off the conversation. Jan.
Well, it's felt like how to work with this influx of the Colorado bioregional, because it felt like I think when there was Baracha and Joe and bioregional activators, and then the Colorado group joined in with this group, and we had been meeting for quite a while, and it felt I wasn't quite sure how to be supportive of the new group, and also to learn, as well as understanding that there were some pieces that we had already been moving on here for a while, and so how to give room for that, and also that how do we kind of co-design how this works, instead of just hearing about it and then, okay, now there's something here, I better go and join that. So there's something about how do we do that, that I'm just wondering if I'm missing anything, or if anybody else has got things sliding off the tray a bit more about this now. So that was some of the feelings I had.
Yeah, let's see. It's going to be really interesting how this all unfolds. It's so outside of my control. Like, as more bioregions join in, more people join in, the spaces are going to get more crowded. And then there will be some effort to sort of create options that are specific, that people can enter, that are more relevant to them on their developmental pathway. I mean, I just see a lot of complexity coming. Toronto's going to join us, and that's a big city, and Joe's doing like 10 events in like 6 days. So we might get, an additional like 30 or 40 people maybe joining these meetings. And, there's so many design considerations as we think about like, how do we hold space for a bioregional network of support and connection for everybody. And my purpose, deep purpose, is helping people on the ground is my number one purpose. People on the ground, landscape partnerships. I want to see actual earth regeneration. That's why I'm here. That's what lights me up. And I'm just kind of moving one dance step at a time. Oftentimes, fairly sloppily, but doing the best I can. So yeah, there's a lot of, and there's so much. It's such a big wave. So
it's like
Jan, please.
It's kind of a little bit like, how do we think about that? Because so we can be prepared for it and work with it instead of just like having it this like, oh my God, all these people are suddenly coming. It's like, well, how can we best design that to support that in the best way? And I haven't felt that inquiry or that questioning or that timing was given to it. And so then we're in a bit of a reactive place, at least I feel I am, instead of like, how do I best support, how do those of us who've been maybe holding space for quite a while actually help some new people hold space? And also, how do we learn how they're doing it so we do it in our bioregions? So it's just a little bit of that designing and thinking it through instead of this like, whoa, 40 people are coming, woo woo. It's like, so I think when we know that will make a change and an impact, it's just like how to work with it well so we really do it as best as we can, knowing that it's still going to be completely unusual and different and we don't know and we're not predicting it tightly, but it's just being a bit prepared for it. Sorry to take more time.
No, it's okay. I will just mention that in some of these meetings that you all have been present in, and I mentioned this last week, your ability to like hold the space and the way you've comported yourself and the topics that you've brought up have been hugely beneficial for the overall conversation, for bringing coherence. And so you may feel like you're a bit reactive, but I think you've done great. And there's going to be so many people involved that I think that it's inevitable that some people feel like they're kind of caught off guard. That's just how this ride is going to be, I think. I hope I don't sound insensitive because I do want to hear from people, and I want to consider how the experience is going for as many people as possible. I think a lot of the conversation is going to be more and more as time goes on. How can other people step forward into leadership roles in addition to me? How can we sort of design a holonic structure that can spread out rather than this like hierarchical structure with like me and Joe or me and whoever else at the top. And so this is going to be a lot about, like Meady mentioned, people stepping into their own sovereignty and saying, I see an opportunity for me to bring my gifts. I'm going to do that. And maybe I reach out to this one or two people to figure out how, but I don't know if I don't think we're going to have the opportunity to design everything ahead of time. I think a lot of this is going to be developing the best dance moves that we possibly can and just improvising a lot. Yeah. And which is one of the reasons why I'm so excited to talk about improvisational theater, Jan, because I think that is kind of the way that that's like one of the more important skill sets I think we can cultivate in all of us. Yeah. Bennett.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you never know what's gonna emerge with an influx of new folks, but I think that a really key bit here is just coming back to the shared context that we have, right? Like the original purpose of Earth Regenerators as a study group for Joe's book. It's like if we can continually refer back to that shared understanding and shared context and like deep awareness of collapse, it's like a lot of the smaller stuff kind of falls into place, I feel. And it's like that's like we're all here for the same reason, right? It's like I understand like the apprehensiveness because you guys have been really holding it down and like really carrying this, through that whole process. But the apprehensiveness to people who come in who might not be aware of the culture or the previous conversations, like speaking as like a little bit of an outsider still, like I can see how it would be frustrating for like the same topics to reemerge and like the same things that have maybe felt like they've already been worked through come through. But yeah, I think just like deep rooting in that awareness that like we're all coming from the same place of just like the pull and the desire to create a functional path forward so that there's a future for this planet or for us on this planet. So yeah, I hear those concerns, and I feel like, yeah, just that cycling back to the original purpose and just like ensuring that people who are coming in like are aware of that purpose and have read the book and like have that awareness of the origins, kind of the history. I think that's a key bit there.
I would say that is clearly our purpose in the Bioregional Catalyst. I don't know if that's the purpose in Earth Regenerators on the whole. I hear that that conversation is still something that's being explored, and maybe folks in the governance group can speak to that more clearly. But my impression is that that's still something that's being searched for. Is that true, Meaty, or anybody else?
Well, rather than respond to that directly, Benji, I'd like to name what seems a very small piece of the story. I was at the Barichara update meeting on Thursday, and Joe represented, it was absolutely beautiful to hear his story of the arrival in Colorado after their trip in Utah. And he characterized it as we arrived and Benji was hosting the Bioregional Catalyst meeting. And that was how it looked to Joe. Actually, Claire was hosting the Bioregional Catalyst meeting. We had agreed at the outset that Claire would be the facilitator. And it seems a very tiny thing, but actually it's huge, because my perception of Joe is that he occupies an extraordinary, unique, and important space. And he occupies that space as so many other unique, extraordinary, and important people do. And it's what makes them incredibly charismatic and incredibly delightful to follow. And it is a hierarchical space. It's already been evident in bioregional activators. We have a Telegram group, and people started discussing this, that, and the other in the Telegram group, and were very quickly told, this Telegram group is for announcements only. Now, there was a decision-making in that wasn't a collective decision-making. It wasn't a participative decision-making. It was a Penny speaking on behalf of Joe, because Joe is now Joe and Penny. And that energy, for me, it's the hero's journey. Joe is busy living the hero's journey. And I, in my relationship with Joe, am also here to support Joe on his hero's journey, which is our hero's journey, and to do everything I can to encourage and support that. And I also see you as a part of a trio in that hero's journey, Benji, when you wear your bioregional activators hat. Now, when I see you here in Bioregional Catalysts, I think about the history, and I really thank Bennett for kind of triggering that thought in my mind. You kind of were the initiating force in Bioregional Catalyst. It was, Benji, Bioregional Catalyst, where is the distinction? It's difficult to tell where the difference is until you actually went up to Maine. And you went to Maine, and you were you dropped into the background for a while your focus was on establishing yourself temporarily in Maine. Now, this is everything I say here is obviously just the MIDI perspective, and I need to label it that. During the time you were away, we that were left in Bioregional Catalyst, we sort of fiddled ourselves around, who was what, and we began to develop actually a very participative process forward as I experienced it. And then Benji came back and, oh, what's the new relationship here now? And I think in a way there's been, we've not had the space to fully articulate that, but there is a strong, for me, I'm part of a very strong we in this group that wants to totally support Benji on Benji's path, because I hold you so dearly as a friend and as an incredible example of someone who lives at the edge, you named your illness earlier in this conversation, but you are living the life and death story, and you are living into it so fully. And I get goosebumps when I say that, Benji, because I want you to thrive and flourish, and I want to do everything in my way to be able to support you. including getting out of your way when it's not useful to you. Now, back here in bioregional catalysts, I experience bioregional catalysts as an integral part of the Earth Regenerator Network. And we are doing something. We have the same North Star as Joe. We have the same North Star as you, and I'm really clear about that. And we're trying to do it in this really challenging, as Bennett speaks to, the participative way. And that requires a different pace. It requires listening to everybody. So I'm now going to shut up and listen to everybody else. But I feel really grateful to have had the space here to actually articulate what I'm seeing in the field and how dearly I hold us for doing it. Thank you.
Very grateful to have been able to hear that, Meaty. Yeah, thank you as well. My thoughts are a swirl at the moment. I'm wondering if anybody can give me graciously some time to reflect and take the mic from here.
I just would actually like to add one thing, which is an experience from the governance group this morning. We had a really interesting thing that's happening. We came to the end of the year. We've got all kinds of pieces in disarray that we're needing to address and articulate. And into the midst came a new person, Eric Bam. And Eric said, hi, I'm here. I'm interested in this, 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 and this, and this. We have, as a result of our really painstaking work through this year, we have an orientation document in the governance fund, and we have a protocol, which is that when people come to the ER governance fund, they are invited and they're welcome whenever, however they come, but they're invited to be present at 3 meetings as observers before they become active participants in the decision making. That doesn't mean they have to be mute the whole time, but we were able to say that to Eric very clearly. We were able to extend the welcome and say, you're very welcome, and this is our protocol. And by the way, here's an orientation document that you might like to read before you come again. And Eric was able to receive our welcome and say, oh, that's absolutely great. And I actually do need to be somewhere else now. I was juggling my time to be here. I'll see you at the next meeting. So I think maybe having something like that, developing something like that for this group of bioregional catalysts could be really important.
Jan, then Claire. Yeah, thank you, Meaty.
Yes, and yeah, Benji, you do certainly welcome to take as much time to integrate it, because I think it's big, and I think I feel it's really important to not take what we've built over the time and the ups and downs for granted. And I sort of feel like just the sense that we're actually going to be the mature group that holds the new people to come in. It's not to be taken for granted, because it's something that needs to continually to be valued and understood as a living web. And I feel the sense of, it's almost going back to the metaphor of the headwaters again. It's like the headwaters are there and things start from the headwaters, but seepage comes in all the way along and integrates. And so it's like this participatory process is very much part of the big river as it develops. And every new bioregion is going to have to move into its participatory process. So to have the headwaters be sort of the Joe energy, whoosh, coming through the Benji energy into here, and not being aware that we're also moving along in the river, and that there's more moisture coming in and seeping and finding its way as the river moves. Is to think of it back that the headwaters is everything, but it's this ongoing maturing of a watershed and the river as it moves, and other water comes in, and like Mindy's example of someone who coming in from another little creek coming in and joining in, and it's like, oh, there's a mingling. And how does that get done well. Again, with this kind of maturity of the participatory process that's being developed. And I think ER is trying to do that. And it's a different energy than the bioregional activators energy that I think Joe felt he needed to shift from, because he's got this other energy, which is also really important, because sometimes the river just needs to go and other times it needs to spread and soak in and deepen and moisturize, and other habitats happen and whatever. So it's not wanting to catch you, Benji, in between, but somehow there's a bit of a, how do we hold this and think about it and name it and care about it and care about you and care about Joe and Penny and care about us that have been holding this for a long time and are still trying to figure out the participatory process. But unless we actually name the participatory process as being absolutely as important, if not sometimes more important than the thrust and the energy and let's plan this, we won't, yet again, modernity's energy of the hero's journey will not let the richness of the ongoing long-term participatory process take root like it needs to and be the habitat that it needs to be.
Well put, yeah, Claire. And then I think we'll probably be at time.
Yeah, I'll be quick, and thank you so much for both Midi and Jan. You've just really beautifully articulated. Yeah, I think I just wanted to bring in that what you were bringing up for me is my, organizational governance and organizational learning, and like looking at organizations as coherent bodies or like dysfunctional. And it has been something that it's just kind of like a lens that I can't help bringing. And the biggest thing that I notice is when who makes the, like, how are decisions made, and how does the flow of information, like how is the information accessible to people so that they even know how to navigate how decisions are made. And the organizations that work really well are the ones where it's so transparent, like how the decisions are made, because then you know who to speak to, because you're interested in something. If it's fuzzy, it sets up, like, it's the antithesis of emergent cultures. It really works against that. And I just really appreciate what you've named, and the example you gave, Midi, of that welcome document to help, sort of the where you've been before. The corporate memory, it's like honoring the ancestors. We do, in many ways, like let's parallel it to Story of Place. You can't just go in and do what you want to. You've got to go and pay attention, observe. Well, how do we help people to do that? That it's like that way of bringing them in, so that you don't just go and reinvent the wheel, and actually then sort of it makes people feel like their time and energy was not valued, because anyway. So I just iterate that real importance of doing that. And if this is about the cultural shift, we need to be modeling it here, because we're taking that back into the bioregions.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for that, Claire. Thank you, Jan, Midi. How about we just go around the room real quick? One word, how you feeling? I know we're over time. If anybody's got to go, feel free. Claire, you want to kick it off? How you feeling?
Yeah, just it's regenerative being here. Thank you. Oh, and RJ.
Yes, just deep gratitude, really, really deep gratitude for all of you in this place.
Jan?
Yeah, appreciating this honest exploration and feeling so good to get it out, because it feels as if it's kind of been bumping around there, and appreciate it that the sensitivity and the ongoing growing that we're doing together. And I pass it to Midi.
Loving being together. Bennett.
Contemplation. On to you, Benji.
Yeah, thank you. I feel held right now. A little bit confused, to be honest, but held. So that's the important thing. It feels all right. So thank you all so much for the conversation. I'll post the recording. And I'll see some of you tomorrow, hopefully, and we can continue this conversation next Friday as well. So thanks. Take care.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks.